Okay, let's move on to number 4. This one. By the way, if you guys want a copy of these notes, I'm pretty sure they'll be made available to you after tonight's class if you just want a copy of what I'm writing now. So this one was titled Human Rights in the UK. Okay.
The Human Rights Act can be seen as far-reaching and some would argue controversial in the UK's history of rights. At the same time, it can be described as a somewhat cautious document that provides the starting point for wider application of the law to rights. In many ways, the freedoms and protections contained within the Human Rights Act were not new to people living in the UK. The output of the UK law influenced most of the clauses in the European Convention of Human Rights. The convention itself was devised following the end of the Second World War by the Council of Europe. UK lawyers played a significant role in the drafting of the convention, and the UK was among the first governments to ratify the convention in 1951. Rights are sometimes described as being of a positive or negative nature. That's to say, some can be expressed as a right to, and others is freedom from. The 1998 Act puts into place 15 specific rights and freedoms, which include rights to liberty and security, a free trial, free expression, free election, and the right to marry and found a family. There are also freedoms from torture, from slavery or forced labour, and from discrimination on grounds such as race, sex, religion, political opinion, or social origin. The Human Rights Act has been described as the start of a process. The Act itself does not expand on the provisions made by the European Convention, which some would consider as following a baseline or minimum standards for human rights.
All right, fantastic. Now that one's a pretty interesting lecture. Lots to talk about there. Let me find a volunteer again. Yeah, Rui, would you like to have a try? Yeah, Rui, no luck. Let's see, who else have I not called out yet? Wu, would you like to have a go? By the way, I'm just scrolling down our list of participants. I see a lot of people haven't connected to the audio. If you actually want to do an exercise, you do have to connect a microphone up. Yeah. No luck? Who have I not called out yet? Carolyn, would you like to have a try? Hello.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Good to meet you. Okay, so this one was talking about human rights. Now, before we get into this one, right, you might have noticed that about halfway through this lecture, the speaker started listing a big bunch of rights.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so the right to freedom against slavery, freedom against this, freedom against discrimination, and so on. The right to own property, the right to, free speech, all that kind of stuff. Right now, do you think I need to list down every single one of those?
No, but I think it's because I not listened all of them, but I recorded 3 of them. I think it's good to list some of them.
Yeah. So if we use our common sense a little bit, we're probably going to say it seems a bit unreasonable to list every single one. Although we would like to. If we were to list every single one, our summary would be just as long as the original text. It wouldn't even be a summary anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So guys, don't stress out if you didn't get every single one. Nobody would. Okay, and at this point in time, I've already forgotten more than half of them, although I haven't taken any notes yet. Okay, cool. So what we want to do is we want to look at broad strokes. So we know that half of this lecture is a big list of rights, and we can kind of mostly ignore those. If you want, you can throw in 1 or 2 examples. Right. Okay, good. So I guess the first question is, what was the start of this about? So the first part of this speech, what was the general idea?
Because for the intro, I think they have introduced the history of the human rights. Beautiful. And what's through it rights. And in the first part, they mentioned the output of the UK law of the convention law that introduced by the government.
Correct. Yes. So if you guys are at home and you're getting confused about the technical terms, think of it as just part 1 was historical stuff, right? And then part 2 was like kind of what are rights, kind of like a definition. Okay. So this again is a two-part like summary that you have to do. Now, obviously, it's not going to be enough for us to just say historical stuff, right? So we're going to, could you give me in like a nice simple term, what's the general idea of the history behind UK human rights?
I think they have mentioned the example about the convention law of the UK during the Second War.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. Right. That was probably the hardest part of this piece. And so your listening is pretty good. So basically it's a controversial document, right? Got drafted after World War II. Okay. So that's the history. And that was not just the UK, for all of Europe. Yeah. So if we were going to the history, what he said, the general idea was after World War II, everyone got together and came up with this Bill of Rights kind of thing. Okay, cool. Easy. Now, part 2, he was talking about, okay, so what exactly are these human rights? Now, this is a bit of a tricky thing. You need to think back before that big, long list of examples. Do you remember what the definition of a human right was?
I think the human rights is about the freedom and the life, the freedom about the race, sex, opinions, and social issues.
Very close. So you would get 50% for freedom. Okay. So human rights, right, consist of, and then number 1 is, right, freedom from something, right? And here your examples are freedom from slavery, freedom from discrimination, etc. Right?
Yeah, I think they get another opinion,
There
but
was a second type of right.
I just recall the words life, but a life of something I didn't.
Yes, very close. So it was, the second version was a right to something, right? So that's like safety, life, property, and so that kind of thing. Yeah. So he said you can divide it into 2 different types: so freedom from something bad and a right to do something, so to speak. Yeah. Okay. And that was kind of our definition of rights in general. Okay. Consist of, and here you might say like things every person should have, let's say. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And that's it, entire piece, right? Now, I don't know if we're going to be making all these audio files available, but if you like, if you have access to them, then you can obviously listen to these pieces again after the class, and you can see whether or not you can catch these points. Right. Keep in mind that when I'm writing these, I'm doing this kind of very casually, so there may be a bit of paraphrasing from the original. In a situation where you're not too sure about what to say, you can always just directly copy the keywords from the original. You can exactly quote what was said if you can remember it. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. Well done.